He thought he was in control. How wrong he was.
Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club.
From the deepest corner of the darkest universe, two brave hosts battle through nameless hordes of ghoulish monsters most foul, all to bring you the eternal glory of the Darkside Drive-In.
It's the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club.
Hey, what's up? It's Shane with Dynamis Media, and you are tuning into the Darkside Drive-In. It is our horror-themed podcast where we cover movies from the 80s, sometimes 70s, and sometimes 90s. But today, my friends, we have a very special episode for you. Stefan, why don't you say hi?
Oh, hello. It's Stefan again here.
We actually, we had a really cool person reach out to us on Instagram, and we do have Instagram, so go there. He reached out to us and asked us if we would take a look at his indie film. And then maybe he would want to come on the show and talk to us. So today we are joined by Matthew Schimdt. Why don't you say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Yeah. So definitely, if you haven't seen this, because we're going to put a bunch of stuff out on Instagram to watch the movie before this comes out, but stop it. Go watch the movie, Mr. Sandman, on YouTube. I'll put the links out. You'll find it. Click it. Watch it. It's great. And then come back because it'll make a lot more sense. Yeah, I think this is our first time doing this. So again, thank you. Bear with us as we kind of go through all this stuff. But, usually we start with a game, but I think Stefan will be pleased to know that we're going to skip that this week, I think.
Well, I don't have to suffer my way through 20 questions. And
yeah,
all of our audience laughs as I flounder trying to figure it out. Yeah, I don't need the humiliation every single other week,
We're giving you a little reprieve. Maybe I'll get you a 2 next time. But
oh no, we don't have time for that.
So why don't you just start kicking us off, Steph, and get us moving on what we're doing today?
All right. Well, yeah. Hi, Matt. Welcome. Thanks again for taking the time to meet with us. And just so the audience knows, I did warn him ahead of time. We're not journalists. We're not gonna be the best at interviews. We're just gonna do our best out here. We're 30-something guys with a podcast, so we have to do all of the things you do on a podcast, include things we're not qualified for. So here we are. But yeah, Matt. So we talked a little bit ahead of the time that you have a couple other features, before Mr. Sandman here, the one that you've come to discuss. And I guess just high level to start out, what kind of drew you to the horror genre?
I mean, I've always been a horror fan. So it was a love that started very early on. The first 2 experiences that I can remember were one of them was my mom taking me to see one of the re-releases of the original Jaws. And we must have walked in late because the first thing I remember is the Alex Kittner scene. Yeah. So we started off with that. And it was weird because we were vacationing in Florida at the time. And I was and still am very much a beach person. And for whatever reason, it just didn't bother me. And I loved every minute of it. And I went right in the ocean the next day. So that wasn't a problem. However, my other experience was a little different. It was the 1981 television debut of the original Halloween. I was 6 years old, so I'm showing my age. And my older brother, my older cousin thought it'd be hilarious to sit me down while my parents were out and make me watch every frame. That bothered the hell out of me.
That'll affect you.
Yeah, that really stuck with me. And I always remember the one scene I always remember was because I have a huge affinity for animals, was him killing the dog. And that bothered me a lot as a kid. And then I remember the next day, my cousin kind of still taunting me, and I'm saying, no, it's daytime. He's not around. I'm fine. They're like, no, don't you remember? He was out there in the day. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, yeah,
He was just hiding behind some bushes. He was right there.
So, but at the same time, it's like, I guess the closest thing I can think of is like maybe comparing it to a car wreck, where it's like you can't help but look. And you can't help but be intrigued, even though you're hoping everybody's all right. So I think with horror, it was just one of those things where it's like, I hated being scared as a kid, but at the same time, I couldn't look away. Like I was just enthralled with it. And then it just grew from there, moving on to like Poltergeist, then moving on to The Shining, and just more and more. And then as I got older, I just became so fascinated with the filmmaking side of it. And it's been a love affair ever since.
Oh, I can definitely tell, because like, to jump straight to that Alex Kintner scene in Jaws, the dolly zoom that like goes into Roy Scheider there, like what an effect that was.
Yep, I've learned in recent years that it's called a vertigo shot.
Yes. Yeah, from the actual first time that it was used, right? From Hitchcock.
Yes, which, and I always argue that Jaws, the first one, is very much a Hitchcock style film. Very much so. Oh,
certainly, yeah. And I think I remember reading, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that whole that dolly zoom that they did for Vertigo, the cinematographer that worked with Hitchcock actually wanted to do it beforehand, had like conceptualized it, but technology wasn't ready. Like they couldn't quite get it to like work mechanically. I don't know if you'd ever heard that.
I actually did not know that. So thank you.
Hopefully it's true. Like internet, fact check me. I know you like to. So.
Well, I just compared Jaws very much to The Birds. I felt we're very much like, I felt that it's a lot of place where Spielberg got his inspiration for the style in which Jaws was presented.
Yeah, like one of those ancient conflicts in literature, like man versus nature. And for whatever reason, it seems like in this case, nature has a vendetta against humans. It's like, we don't understand why, but it's happening. So I can see that for sure.
Both films, I love them both, The Birds and Jaws.
Yeah, I do. The Birds was definitely one I watched when I was way too young. And I was like, why are these birds doing this? And I think I was with my grandma. And she's like, they're just bad. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay.
I think that's like a running theme for most people that get into horror. We actually just covered The Blob. And we both were talking about how the 88 version, the remake, about how we both saw that way too young, and just the traumatic, like the trauma we had probably for the first like 3 or 4 years after seeing that film.
Yeah, actually, all the Dillon brothers actually went to my high school, and Kevin and Matt were both really good friends with my sister and brother-in-law growing up.
Oh, cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
An accidental thematic link to our last episode. That's incredible. Okay, well, yeah, kind of pivoting in the same direction then, we kind of talked about the mechanics of filmmaking. Speaking towards, like, I'm sure the challenges of being like an independent filmmaker, in a increasingly, I feel like, corporatized market. Like, how's that, like, basically, like, what amount of passion must it take to be willing to work through those unique challenges?
I don't let myself get distracted by too much. My producer always is very much concerned with the saturation of today's indie film market. I don't really worry about it, because I feel that if you're lucky enough for the stars to align, and you put enough work in, and you do put out a quality product that people like, I think you will have a better chance of standing out even in a saturated market such as this. And it's actually, I think it's a great thing, because I think that having horror fans have finally the capability in their own hands to make their own horror movies. It's just like, me as a horror lover, I can appreciate like the fact that everybody's bringing their passion to the screen. And again, to varying results, because, a lot of us are indie or amateur filmmakers. So, I know it took me a while to get a little better, and hopefully I'll keep improving with each film. But I really think it's a great thing that the market is flooding with indie filmmakers, because when you get one that takes off, and I'll just use Terrifier as an example, well, now you have Hollywood starting to look our way and say, hey, these can actually be successful. And it opens up the door to a lot of people who couldn't, most people, they can't get someone to pick up the phone, like an agent or something.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that one of the unique things about horror, at least from what I've kind of recognized, it seems like a lot can be done on a lot lower of a budget, and you don't usually need a lot of star power to sell it. It's usually a place where ideas can kind of come to the forefront and take over.
Yeah, very true. I think even before this indie horror explosion, studios have always said that horror is their bread and butter because they're relatively cheap to make. And like you just pointed out, you don't need a star. It doesn't cost a lot of money to scare people if you do it right. You just have to be good at tapping into people's psychology. And even if you take, even if we go back to Jaws, the most effective scene is probably the opening scene. And you didn't see anything. You only could picture what was going on beneath the surface of that jet black water. So if you can use the dark effectively, you can scare the heck out of people with not a big budget. And it really gives, again, you still have to be good at it, but the indie filmmaker a real opportunity to do something simplistic yet scary.
Well, I think that's a good place to kind of now segue into the feature that we're here to talk about, Mr. Sandman. Your newer. When was it released? I think that it was just October, right?
Yeah, October 9th. It dropped on YouTube.
Yeah, speaking of creepy things in the dark, I don't want to give away too much about the plot of it if our listeners haven't gone and watched it yet, even though, guys, we told you to at the beginning. Just go watch it.
You had one job.
You had one job to do, and that was it.
Well, two, technically. But
I mean, yeah, I guess also listen. So yeah, for Mr. Sandman, watching this concept, like, where did that come from? I have a feeling that there's something to this.
I'm really big on primal. And I think with primal things, primal fears, I wanted to make a film that I felt that no matter what race, culture, gender, everybody could relate to, because now how good it was is not up to me. It's up to the audience. But I wanted to make it at least relatable to as many people as possible. So, one of the first things that hit me was, well, everybody at some point in their life is scared of the dark. Everyone either who's watching this movie is either a kid or at one point was a kid. So I really wanted to focus on the relatability and try to tap into those childhood fears of the dark. And because I just thought, okay, I could have all these things happen where, kids hear things at night, see things at night that aren't there. And everybody I've talked to, when I said, hey, did you ever wake up in the middle of the night and you fell asleep watching TV on the couch and your parents have gone to bed, you had that long, terrifying journey back to bed? Everybody I've talked to said, yes, I've been there. So I knew I had at minimum a relatable concept. And I said, okay, instead of just a child's imagination, let me put an actual threat in the dark so that it is more cinematic friendly. Otherwise, you would just see a kid running around in the dark being scared.
Well, I will say that those scenes are very effective before we know that something's actually there. That tension that in those scenes of that, particularly, Shane had read some of my notes I took beforehand, and I made a lot of notes about your use of empty space and the way that you would frame, like, Zoe, our lead. Sort of sometimes the angles are a little off on her. Sometimes she's very small and the darkness is really big. So you knew exactly what you were doing with tension for framing those shots. It was incrable.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad it landed on you that way.
Oh yeah. Like,
it was fantastic.
Well, I always think about this as like, I don't have the skills for this. Like, when you're creating shots like that, especially considering like it is just, one child, presumably one house, and then like how do you decide like this will be a shot where I'll do this, or like creating a continuity between these like rooms and these scenes?
As far as choosing shots, it just definitely comes from my love of film. And I am very much a horror fan, but in reality, I really do love all genres. And if you grew up on that language that I did, just really just delving deep into films, and I was lucky enough to grow up with a group of friends that love to talk and analyze films and say, oh, then this shot, like, made me feel this way. So you can't help but absorb it over time. And I think it was Tarantino who said, I didn't go to film school, I went to films. And I can totally relate to what he's saying, because if you really are passionate about them, you can't help but absorb the language, as I like to call it. So if you're trying to create an emotion in a scene, you're going to think back to some of your favorite movies that captured that emotion for you and be like, okay, what shots did they use? What angles? What, like you said, composition of framing, putting a figure in frame, but making the dark bigger so you feel overwhelmed, or a slow pan in, or like we talked about earlier, the Jaws vertigo shot, like what does that make you feel? So you try to match up the feeling you're going for with a shot that expresses that feeling. And you do that by jumping into, or at least I do that by jumping into my memory bank of, okay, what shot in film history made me feel that way? And I just use it.
Well, you did it. I would say especially that run up to go upstairs when she was going through the living room. I was like, oh man.
Well, then drop the toy, right, or the stuffed animal. Was it a rabbit?
Oh yeah.
And it like I think what you were talking about earlier, like you're just trying to put yourself like as a kid, like how would you feel? I think we've all been there where we've like made that mad dash to like our bedroom, or like had that scary like basement where you had to run upstairs or something, and you left something. You're like, oh my God, do I go back down? Yeah, it was such a cool shot.
Thank you.
And along with that, I was actually thinking a lot about the atmosphere. And here's the part where maybe I'm just reading too much into it. And if I am, just say, hey man, chill. But I actually really like this atmosphere you create with like some darkness, some light, some like artificial darkness. And it kind of felt dreamlike to me. And I appreciated your use of like Georges Méliès's Astronomer's Dream, and then Camille Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, because especially Danse Macabre, like that feels like a very dreamlike piece to bring into it. Like I think of it's like when it was used in the fantasy scene, a lot of people use it for the fantasy scene in like Haxan, the old like silent film.
Yep.
That feels very deliberate to me, that you're creating this like otherworldly dreamlike reality. But if I'm reading too much into it, you can just tell me I am.
No, you're correct. I actually, I've only seen bits and pieces of Haxan on, I think it was on Max is where I saw it, and I was fascinated with it. But I actually wanted to save it I wanted to save the notes I was making for a potential future project, so I actually stopped halfway through. But with the Astronomer's Dream, that was intentional, that I tried to keep everything dream or nocturnal theme, to try to keep with the feeling of the movie. Because when people watch movies, they will not necessarily, like if you ask an average person, maybe not an avid movie person, be like, hey, did you like that movie? Be like, yeah, no, I liked it. And then you ask them why. They're going to have a hard time explaining it, but it's because it made them feel a certain way. So with trying to keep that nocturnal dreamlike feel, I wanted people to have that feeling. And I knew if you can make them feel, it sinks in a little better, and it makes them, or in your case, it had you delve deeper into it and pick it apart. So you're right with the general theme of what I was going for. And I was trying to stick to a dreamlike scenario. And that's again, without giving away too much, I kind of, threw in a couple of curveballs to not let you know, are you in reality or are you dreaming at certain points?
Yeah, that dream motif, and then like the transformation from dream to nightmare, I would say, that happens over the course of it. I will say that you actually did have me jump out of my skin at one point.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
yeah, there's
yeah,
was it the same scene,
yes,
the mom
dude,
thing?
I was
Like,
not expecting that. That
So
like,
we'll just say so. It was the mom scene that made me jump.
yeah.
yeah, I don't
Oh
want to spoil
man,
anything, but yeah, that I jumped out of my skin at that. I was like, absolutely not. I wasn't ready for that at all.
yeah. The makeup, like it was like, yeah, it was. I don't want to, like you said, we don't want to spoil too much, but man, yeah, I jumped for sure because I was on my phone. It was like 2 a.m. My wife's sleeping beside me. I'm trying not to make too much noise because we have a dog and she wakes up, then wakes my wife up. Then then I'm in trouble. So holding the phone and I almost dropped it on my face. Like it was like, I was like jumped. Yeah. So,
Well, I'm glad. That means I did my job.
yeah.
Kind of segueing from that, just looking at IMDb and everything, pretty small team you have that you're working with here. How does that work for like, the makeup effects for the scene we just talked about, or for like the effects for the Sandman that occurs throughout? Like, that must be, and you definitely do less is more kind of take, which I think works really well here. So you definitely put your efforts into specific sequences. So how did that work for such a small production?
Well, the makeup in particular kind of leads to somewhat of a funny story, although it was not funny at the time. We were trying to apply the white contacts to the mom, and she was having a terrible time trying to get the one in, and one of them slipped
Oh
and
no.
went up into her eyelid, and my heart dropped. I was like, uh-oh. I was in full-blown panic mode, and she started like shaking in fear, and I was like, okay. I'm like, breathe. I'm like, but my first thought was like, well, here we go, trip to the ER. Like, there's no way around this. I'm not taking a chance leaving that. After like a few seconds of her breathing, she blinked and it magically fell perfectly back into place. I felt horrible, but I was like, okay, just don't move. Let's get the shot quick and we'll get it over with. And you'll never have to do it again, I swear. She was such a trooper about it. So she was a good sport. But trying to get that thing to sit right, it was so frustrating. So frustrating. So yeah, a small crew is a blessing and a curse because you have total control and your mind's not scattered and everything's kind of focused to that small environment. But at the same time, when you don't have a expert doing certain things, you can have certain scenarios arise, like what happened with Mackenzie's her name in real life. But she was such a trooper about it, so I give her a lot of credit.
Yeah, that can be like people, like even like big productions dealing with the contacts, you can hear some horror stories. So yeah, I can imagine when it's just a few you in a room, it's like, oh no.
Yeah, and I'm terrified to put anything in my eye, so I give her credit for even doing it. But she has worn contacts before, so she was somewhat used to it, thank God. But yeah, that was a rough one. But as far as your other point of less is more, for me, again, it goes back to primal. I'd rather the audience somewhat fill in and bring their own fears and trepidations to the film with the goal of making them feel more and engage more. So for example, if you just show someone's head getting chopped off, now it can be scary and it can be emotional, but it's all right in front of your face. There's no room for your brain to go. You're like, oh, that person got their head chopped off. If you suggest things and somewhat keep it in the dark and still like get to the point that that's what happened, but you don't necessarily see everything. Well, again, going back to the Jaws example, your mind fills in what's going on beneath that surface. You know she's getting chewed up. you can't help but not know that. And she's screaming for her life and praying to God and asking God for help. But beneath the surface, your mind is picturing how the shark is chewing her up. So the less is more, I have always felt works a lot better in horror than overexposure. And I think that's also a good point of why horror gets away with a lower budget, especially the good ones, because if you start adding CG into horror, my personal taste is I think it looks cheesy and not scary at all. But if you keep the threat in somewhat shadows and let the mind take over, I think it's 1,000 times more effective. And I think, if you go back to the original Halloween, again, Michael Myers' face is a blank canvas. It's not a laughing clown. It's not an angry face. It's not anything. It's a blank canvas. So we're putting our own fears on Michael Myers. And I think that's what makes him such an effective villain through multiple films and multiple interpretations. So you're right. I do tend to lean towards less is more when possible.
Yeah, and that's you won't find an argument from us when it comes
definitely.
to CGI. Yeah, because the less is more works. Like, yes, if you shroud it in darkness, like if you keep the CGI where it's strong, it's great. But like, look no further than what 1982's The Thing versus 2011's The Thing, where they did it all CG. What a disaster! So that's why we try to keep ourselves to the 80s, where like everything had to be practical because they didn't have the technology.
Right, and like you said, CGI is great in its place. I'm a huge superhero movie person, and I want CGI in those movies. I want to see that huge battle with Thanos and all the Avengers, going at it. Like, you can't achieve that practically. So I want it where in its place. But in horror, it just tends to fall flat.
Yeah, horror, you want to be more tactile, I feel like. Like, I want to feel like I can be touched by this thing, like it's out there in the world with me. Like, I'm never gonna get, Thor's hammered, or like Captain America's not gonna throw a shield at me. That could be CG all day. Like, and they do have to put the money behind it to make that work, though, too. So,
True.
I kind of wanted to. I forgot to bring this up when I was talking about the atmosphere. Just more of a compliment than a discussion point. But one thing that I made in my notes a point was that I feel like the geography of that house, like it had a real sense of place. Like I feel like with a lot of, independent horror films, they tend to overlook the continuity of space, like of making sure that you understand where you are. So like whenever, Zoe's running from one part of the house to the other, like we've gotten to know it in the short time that you've given it to us, that it felt like I know exactly where she needs to go from here or where she wants to go from here. Where like, so I just wanted to kind of say, hey, good work that you made it really feel like an actual location.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you had no trouble with what my producer called the flow. He was concerned about that. He said, hey, you know the house. I know the house. Are we sure the audience is knowing the house, the layout, and following things? I said, I think so for the most part, but if they don't, it would only be like maybe something minor, maybe like a minor, like, okay, I'm not sure where that door goes, but I was never concerned it would be enough to take people out of the movie. And that's really the only concern, is when you do something that actually takes someone out of the film. So, but I will definitely, I know he'll listen to this eventually, once I send it to him, but I'm glad that someone validated my point of view, so I could say I'm right and I could say he was wrong.
Well, I'm glad I could help with that. And I'll be honest, like, that's not just me like gassing you up for no reason, because I'm not afraid to admit that I can be really dense when it comes to like the sense of space and things. So whenever I was able to actually, keep up with this, I was like, oh man, this is actually really well put together, because I can tell where I am at all times.
Good. I'm glad.
I think I've gone through most of the things I wanted to cover in my notes, but the last thing I wanted to bring up was just your cast, like a small cast. Our lead, Zoe, is played by Haley Kate Schmidt. I'm sure that's not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. Yeah, that is my younger daughter.
Yeah, she anytime a child has to have like the basically the emotional heft of a movie on them, you always wonder how it'll go. And I think she did an excellent job carrying that.
Thank you. Yeah, she's been so far. Everyone I talked to has very much complimented her. She had only done pretty much school plays up until that point. So, but I know she has. I knew she could handle everything that we were trying to do. I knew she'd be able to pull it off, and it is somewhat of an advantage in cinematic style is you're not in front of a theater where if you mess up in front of everyone. If we messed up here, we could do another take, but she handled it well, and I was very proud of her.
Yeah, and so much of the movie was her reactions, like her looking at things, is like, yeah, that's a lot of emoting to do for a child. I feel like, I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't really know, but it feels like that's a lot of work. So yeah, I just wanted to say how impressed I was with her performance. You definitely felt the dread of the entire situation.
Thank you. I'll definitely pass that compliment.
Was that hard for you? Like, because I know you kind of have to separate the director filmmaker from the father. Was it tough seeing her in those positions? Like, because like some of those were, I mean, again, with the one scene, like I'm sure there's a lot more going on in the room that's like a lot more relaxed and stuff, but like, it got intense, right? So is that tough to see? Like, are you able to kind of like separate yourself a bit? I know, she's not in danger, obviously, because you're there and but like, like thinking like that would be tough, if I like, again, I don't have kids, but that has to be a little bit concerning, right?
A lot less than you would think. And I'll tell you why, because she is used to being coached. She's on a very competitive swim team, and she's used to being coached in like a very, I don't want to use the word harsh because that's not accurate, but very like straightforward, very like,
sure,
stern way. And they're held like accountable. So she's used to working hard for what she wants. So she doesn't shy away from work. So she like responds well to, directness. So if I had to like, trust me, there were plenty of times. It was a very relaxed set, and there were plenty of times where she was goofing around, and I had to like pull her back. But at no point was she letting the scene get to her. Now, the only thing that did get to her were the logistics, because obviously we had to shoot at night. So now we're limited to, basically just weekends or maybe a couple hours on a school night. And it was sometimes right after swim practice, and she's exhausted. So it was hard to, and with cinematic style, I think there were like 250 roughly shots in this movie. So, and pretty much almost all her. So there were times where she was just exhausted, and we couldn't squeeze out a few more than a few shots at a time, because she would just go into tired, grumpy mode. And just like, and me and my producer would look at each other and be like, okay, we know when she's done for the night, and we're not going to get anything else good out of her. So we call it quits. So it was more the logistics that was a challenge for her than the actual scenes, because she's a horror fan herself. So it was easy for her.
Great.
So.
Awesome.
Don't make her into a method actor just yet and have her do it tired,
I let her go to sleep.
I know we're trying not to spoil stuff, but that rosary scene, like, oh my God, like that shot, that's still image. I'm probably going to use it for our promo stuff, because her just flipping around and like, just like it went from like, I'm afraid to like, that was kind of like a turning point in that character a bit. Again, I might be looking too much in that, I don't know, but that scene was just, I don't know. That captivated me probably the most out of all of those shots. Just grabbing that turn, just bam. Like, I don't know. It was powerful.
The character went into survival mode, basically.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. A lot of intensity in that scene for sure. And on a slightly lighter note, how funny was the grandma?
Yeah.
Like, just, hey, don't stay up too late.
Yeah, right.
Get taken away by the Sandman. It's like,
go to bed or someone will kill you.
Yep. She was great. We had her pretty much just one night. We got her sequence done. And then shortly after we filmed, but before the movie came out, she got picked up on national spots. And for 2 years running, she was Medicare Martha. And if you YouTube the commercials, you'll find them. She was doing the national Medicare spots. So it was like, we're like, yes, hey, we got a quasi celebrity to be in our movie. So that was funny too. But she was great. Sherry was awesome, and we knew from her audition that like it was pretty much a no-brainer. And she just almost every take of her monologue she knocked out of the park. So it was a very easy night shooting with her.
That's awesome. Definitely look up those adverts after this, though.
Yeah, we'll check them out.
I want to see that.
Yeah, Medicare Martha. I'm pretty sure they're still on YouTube.
Probably a very different character from Scary Grandma.
Yeah, it's something you'll get more of a kick out of. You'll get more of a laugh out of for sure.
All right, well, we're coming kind of to the end of my notes. I just kind of wanted to bring up one last thing. Just, what director, writer, cinematographer, every hat you had to wear on this. Like, as a micromanagement, like what level of organization do you like, superhuman levels of organization must you have to go through all of that? Because it seems like a Herculean effort to me.
It's a lot of work. It is. But the more you plan, I hesitate to use the word easy, but it's easier that it is. I did, write a screenplay. I did do a shot list. I did it so that on the nights we were working, I knew exactly what we had to get done. But I don't know if we brought this up yet, but I did start out in doing found footage. And with found footage style, you can kind of let the camera run for almost 5 minutes at a time and get 5 minutes worth of material. Well, with cinematic style, if you watch any movie and you watch 60 seconds of a movie, you're going to see a minimum of like a dozen cuts. So this ended up being, like I said before, about 250 shots. So each of those shots had to be set up, lit, multiple takes. So it was really a long process to do this. And because we were on time limits almost every time we shot, we can only get like a handful of shots a night. So the whole project from start to finish took about 3 years, give or take. Yes, wearing multiple hats is tiring, but I don't want to take away credit from my producer, who was very much my right-hand man and extremely helpful, taking a lot of the weight off me just in the logistics of shooting. It's tough, but when you love what you're doing, it's not always easy. You're still struggling, but when you have a goal to reach the final product, it just keeps you going. So tough, yes, but rewarding at the same time.
That's awesome. And forgive me if I'm incorrect, but your producer is somebody you've collaborated with previously in your other endeavors, right? I think it was Brian Berkeley, if I'm not mistaken.
Brandon Berkeley.
Brandon Berkeley. Sorry, my bad.
All right. Yes. He's a friend of mine that we knew we shared the same passion for, mostly for horror, but movies in general. I mean, we could basically talk in almost a different language of just movie quotes to each other, and we know exactly what the other one's saying. So awesome. It's very much a kindred spirit. He's but don't get me wrong, we have butted heads multiple times on directions of where certain things should go. But it always ends up, we basically make each other better at what we're doing. So I got to give him a lot of credit for his part in this, as much as I would love to strangle him sometimes.
Yeah, the creative process, I'm sure, can be stressful. So
when you have one person coming from the Shining, Exorcist school of thought, and you have another person coming from Friday the 13th Part 3 school of thought, we can butt heads sometimes. So there you go.
That makes sense. Well, yeah, like I said, I kind of came to the end of my notes. Shane, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up before I let our friend here have some closing remarks?
Yeah, I guess I don't think we were recording yet, but we do love the 80s movies, and I don't think I'd be doing my duty if we wouldn't ask for recommendations for stuff to cover, because I was born in 89 and our counterpart, my friend here, is in 87. So as much as we are products of the 80s, we didn't get to live through the glory days. So
you missed a phenomenal decade.
Yeah.
A phenomenal decade. Recommendations as far as 80s horror?
Well, so we've done how many? We were at 36 films, Stefan?
Yeah, we've done 36 so far.
And we've seen a lot of them, right? This is like kind of like our thing. So we're always looking for that like unsung hero, the Prowler, right? Or we found the Video Dead, which we both loved. And God bless Tubi for getting some of these back into the conversation. So if you know any like deep cuts, we'd love to check them out.
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot, but
yeah, I'll be honest. It's a really good question. It just may have stumped me a little bit, only because I don't have my collection directly in front of me. But I'll just throw caution to the wind here and take a stab. I'm not sure what year. I'm not sure if this was technically 80s. I think it was The Wraith.
Okay.
We haven't done that one.
We have not done that.
And I haven't seen that, so it's going on the list.
Okay, good. Yep. The Wraith, very much a B movie, but it very much a cult hit, very much a fan favorite. So I would add The Wraith with Charlie Sheen to your list.
Okay.
Let's see. 80.
Randy Quaid is in this thing.
Oh man.
Yep. Randy Quaid. I think
Shitter's full.
I think it was Clint Howard. Was in there. A horror film that not a lot of people have seen, or I shouldn't say that, but it's somewhat underground. Ghoulies was something I watched a lot as a kid. There's also one that scared the hell out of me as a kid, and I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I believe it's called Blood Sisters.
Ooh.
Blood Sisters.
Yes.
Okay.
I would probably check that out. I'm trying to think of 80s. And what I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get off with you guys. I'm going to look at my collection and I'm going to say, oh, I should have said this. But that's okay. I'll message you. If
I kind of set you up there. I was kind of saying, hey, definitely keep in touch, because we obviously love talking to you. But yeah, always happy to get any sort of recommendations on this stuff, which is great for us. We're finding new 80s movies constantly, which I didn't think could happen because it stopped being the 80s. So.
Yep, I will definitely. I'll go through my collection.
Yeah.
And I will definitely hit you up with stuff I think is somewhat underground, at least, and worth checking out. I do want to throw a caveat out there. As much as I butt heads with my producer, I actually love slashers and a lot of cheesy 80 horror, but it's a different mindset. I'm going in to be entertained.
Sure.
Whereas, like, if I'm going into The Shining, I'm going in for like an intense watch. So, but I don't love those movies any less. It's just a different mindset when I'm going in. So, for instance, if you haven't seen Friday the 13th Part 6, please watch it. It's my favorite of the franchise. I would throw that in there. But I'm going to assume you guys have watched it only because it's part of the major franchise.
That was our favorite one too, right, Stefan?
No, well, it was among them. So part 6 was the one where Jason comes back, right? Like he accidentally brings him back to life with the lightning.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that one was a high ranked one. We did a tier list of the Friday the 13th recently. But yeah, because we really loved the one that came after it, part 7, which was the one with the psychic girl, because it was just so bananas.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But no, this one ranked high for us. And one of the actors in it was one of the guys from Return of the Living Dead, which rules. So it's cool to see him and other stuff.
Yeah, I've met a couple people from part 6. And I've met one person from part 7. That's the little girl actress who played the main character when she was the little girl in the beginning.
Oh, okay, yeah. When her dad goes into the water.
Yep. Yep. I met her. She's a sweetheart. And from part 6, I met Tom Matthews. He was really cool. And I got to meet Darcy DeMoss, who was the one who was in the RV with her boyfriend. And
Oh, yeah.
crushed into the side. She was
With
also
the face imprint on the,
Yeah.
the wall.
which is one I love those practical effects because I'm always like, how did they do that? You know, like I like those simple effects I love because I'm always like, how, how'd you do that? Something simple as that. Those are the things I love. It's like a magician where I'm just sitting there like wondering if you've ever seen Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, there's a shot where he's flying down at full speed towards the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. And to this day, I cannot figure out how they did that shot. So if you guys have any ideas, let me know. Some of those practical effects are amazing.
Yeah, I know the shot, but definitely don't know the
I couldn't
the
tell
movie
you.
magic of it all.
I thought wires, but like now I'm like thinking back in my brain, like I'll have to watch that movie again because I honestly, now that you mention it, I never really even was like, hey, I wonder how they did this.
And how did you turn the S into saran wrap and throw
Yeah.
it around Zod? What was that about?
Yeah, I'll tell you, watch that shot again. And if you could tell me how they did it, I'd love to know because I cannot figure it out. It is such an impressive shot.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to go start going onto YouTube. See if
Now
there's
we have
any-
homework.
Yeah, see if there's any documentaries, some like behind the scenes like featurettes or something on that. Because I think I have the DVD somewhere. And if it's hopefully my apartment, if it's at my mom's house, that's over. It's in an attic somewhere, so I'll never find it. But
And back to your goalies comment, we did Goalies 3, Goalies Go to College. That's the one that was the tortured episode with the audio. So
in some ways, Ghoulies 3 is also a torture.
yeah,
'Cause it's
pancake.
just constant one-liners that like land maybe 30% of the time.
Oh my god!
We'll definitely go through my collection and find
Please
some.
do.
Yeah, we'd love it. Yeah, we'll check it out. Yeah, the Wraith. I'm gonna be looking for that thing.
I'm watching that tonight.
I can't imagine. I'd be surprised just from talking to you guys if you didn't enjoy it. I'd really be surprised.
It
Hey, we love
looks like it's
spookies,
right up-
so
Yeah, spookies. Oh no. Yeah, that's a rough one, but it's also fun. But yeah, okay. So at the end here, we obviously want to plug, Mr. Sandman. That's why we're here. So yeah, it's available. I think I saw that it was also available for rent on Prime. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we're. I can't. I guess there's not too much I can say at the moment, but a couple other. 2 other places have licensed it but not released it yet. So hopefully it'll be out on a couple more platforms soon.
All right, awesome.
Awesome.
Is there anywhere like any socials or anything you have that people could follow if they want to keep up with what you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously I reached you guys on Instagram, so I have my director's account and Acres Films account, which is the film production company that I release everything under, and that's Acres Films is also on X and TikTok and Facebook and the new one Slasher, which is, if you guys aren't familiar, a horror social media site.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Slasher app. It's pretty cool. It's all horror fans, so it's a horror community there.
Downloading right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be checking that out.
You'll be our first friend.
Hit me up. I'm under Acres Films. But yeah, those are the only ones I can think of.
All right. Well, you heard it here, everybody. Go follow him so that he knows he didn't just waste a bunch of time talking to us for this roughly hour or so,
Well,
including the time.
To be clear, follow social media. Don't follow him. Follow.
Oh, yeah, don't do that.
Follow the links. We don't.
The socials, please.
Cool. Well, look, Matt, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you reaching out to us. I know we kind of went back and forth on timing and stuff. I appreciate you being patient with us while we set this up.
No, not at all. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Anybody who wants to, chat films, analyze films, I'm always up for it.
Awesome. Well, you might be our phone a friend, call in. Hey, we need some, give us some dirt here. What happened? What's your opinion on this shot? Because we get into little arguments sometimes over certain film. Well, not really arguments, but we might need an expert. So I think you might be the resident expert for us. We might have to reach out and pick your brain. But
I'd love to.
Yeah,
I'd love
awesome.
to.
Again, Mr. Sandman, please go watch it. Like, absolutely, it's a must. It's fantastic. I literally almost got thrown and had to sleep on a couch because of the scary scene. So definitely take the time. It's a great movie. We can't wait to see what you have coming next. I'm excited. All your back catalog's great. So if you people are like, hey, I need something fun to watch over the Christmas break, here it is. Found your next couple of films. So Stefan, I don't know if you had any closing thoughts.
No, I don't really have anything else to bring up. I will, as I usually do, just plug Rebel Revolver, who wrote the theme song for our podcast. We super appreciate that. They don't have any shows on their calendar coming up right now, but if you're in the Pittsburgh area and you want to go see some live music, follow their socials. They'll probably have some shows coming up here in 2025, so stay peeled for that.
Cool. Well, I've been Shane.
I've been Stefan, and our guest,
Matt Schmidt.
Nailed it. Got it.
We should have told him we're gonna.
No, we just throw it on him. We dropped the movie bomb question on him. I got the outro bomb. So yeah, we did it, guys. But thanks everybody again, Mr. Sandman. Check it out. You'll see all the links. I'll post like crazy. So thanks. Bye.
He thought he was in control. How wrong he was.
Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club. From Dynamis Media comes a horror cyclopedia, watching movies from the gates of hell. Covers ripped from a blockbuster shell. Officer Bosch is the only good cop. Jugs and the stuff just can't be stopped. Things get hairy and the werewolf's there. Turn the corner and the prowler is there. It's the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club. Shane's the one who runs the show. He produces and keeps the flow. The Savini of the ones and twos. Only Jack Cordell has bigger shoes. Stefan does the bulk of the research. His descriptions just can't be besmirched. Lots of synopses are the top of lore. Just like Lamson, you'll be begging for more. It's the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club.
From the deepest corner of the darkest universe, two brave hosts battle through nameless hordes of ghoulish monsters most foul, all to bring you the eternal glory of the Darkside Drive-In.
It's the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club. It's the Darkside Drive-In. Come to the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In. It's the Darkside Drive-In Movie Club.